let's move on. Let's talk about what we learned this past week, but we're going to break down games between two teams. Obviously, the first matchup takes us to Sunday Night Football between the Steelers and the Jets. Now, there was a lot of controversy going into this game earlier in the week with Mike Tomlin making the decision to move on to Russell Wilson and start him over Justin Fields, who's led them to their winning record thus far. Now, a lot of scrutiny was thrown at Mike Tomlin, and I'll be the first to admit, it did not look good early. It was a very rocky start for Russell Wilson early on. I believe the first two series were like unforgettable, right? But overall, they managed to score 37 points on what we considered one of the more elite defenses, which we'll talk about the Jets here in just a minute. But Russell Wilson finished the game, I believe, 264 yards on 29 attempts. But the biggest thing I thought, and this is where I felt like Mike Tomlin really did a good job, was the relationship between Russell Wilson and George Pickens. We all knew or have known George Pickens is a pretty good wide receiver. Now, not to say that he sucked when Justin Fields kind of took over the reins there, but Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are two types of quarterbacks. Justin Fields is more of in my opinion, a one-read quarterback. If it's not there, he's running, right? Where Russell Wilson is more comfortable and in the pocket. And I think that's why Mike Tomlin made the switch. I think he knew that down the stretch, although Justin Fields is the more athletic, he's younger, probably cheaper right at this point, he knows if he has any chance of winning and making a deep run into the playoffs, he's going to have a quarterback that can sit there and make throws. And that's exactly what we saw from Russell Wilson as he started to settle in, right? Listen, the Steelers now, if this keeps up, are legitimate. I think so. Their defense is going to be good, and they have offensive talent. Now the offensive line still questionable, but I think it's better, right? In other weeks than it's been before. The running game maybe started to get going with Najee Harris. I believe he rushed for over 100 yards, if I'm not mistaken, and a touchdown. So I really, really feel that the Steelers are in a point right now where they got good coaching. The team is buying into what's happening there, and you can tell, like. If you're Justin Fields, I understand, man. He's looking at it as well, I've done all I can do to get us to this point. Like, why are you punishing me? But I think overall, this is the better play for this season. Now, for the future, maybe you go back to Justin Fields, because how much more does Russell Wilson have left in the tank? That remains to be seen. But if him and George Pickens can continue to connect, start spreading the ball off even to their tight end and Freiermuth, this offense is going to be very potent. This is the offense that I think that a lot of people have been waiting to see from the Pittsburgh Steelers because they finally have a quarterback back there that can throw the football. Listen, they've suffered the last couple of years with Mason Rudolph and a list of other guys that they tried to start. Kenny Pickett, right? Justin Fields comes in. He's a little different. Like I said, he's more athletic. He's a running quarterback versus a passing quarterback, a pure passer quarterback. Whereas Russell Wilson is more mobile. He maybe isn't as mobile as he once was before, but definitely can still move around the pocket a little bit more agile than other guys that they've had previously up until Justin Fields took the job earlier this season. So I think the Steelers, they're a team you want to buy some stock in now, for sure, especially if Russell Wilson continues to play the way he's playing. And if Sunday night was just the beginning of it, I think they've only begun to scratch the surface. So now looking at the other team, a team that's unlike the Steelers, they are dysfunctional. Steelers are not dysfunctional, but the Jets are. Very, very, very underwhelming performance for Aaron Rodgers yet again. But I don't even know what to say. Like, the big news was they got Devontae Adams. They traded for him. Now, I get it. It's his first game in a Jets uniform. You shouldn't expect too much. I believe he finished the game with like 20 yards or 30 yards, if I'm not mistaken. But he failed to make any significant impact within the game whatsoever. And the offense continues to struggle. I don't know why they don't run the football. I know why. I know why they don't run the football, because Aaron Rodgers is there, right? He is the de facto offensive coordinator now. And they're not running the football the way they need to. People are watching these games. You're like, you got Breece Hall, you got Braylon Allen. Like, run the football. Is it a matter of they can't run the football, or they just don't want to run the football? And another thing, the Jets defense, like, what happened to this defense? They started the game pretty hot, right? Believe they went up on the Steelers rather quickly, and then the defense just kind of just gave up at the end of the day, right? They made Russell Wilson look like he was Russell Wilson back in the days when he was contending for Super Bowls back in Seattle. And then you look at the special teams issues, missed field goals. I believe there was a block extra point or something like that. Overall, this team is not buttoned up at all. And they had the new head coach, the interim head coach, and Jeff Ulbrich. He has a lot to do and fix with this organization. At the end of the day, I feel like it's not going to work out for them. I thought they had a chance to maybe make the playoffs, but I don't know, man. Every week they continue to be dysfunctional and not play complementary football. It's either the offense ain't great or the defense isn't great, or you got the special teams and you got all of them together. And this was a game where none of them were great. And Aaron Rodgers has thrown another 6 interceptions in 3 games or something crazy like that, some stat line like that. I don't think Devontae Adams was the fix-it for this problem, because Aaron Rodgers is not the same Aaron Rodgers. And you Jets fans, maybe some of you are waking up and you're realizing, like, you know what? He isn't. And I think we're living off of his name a lot more. It's like when you go to a restaurant that's been popular for years, and then you go there and they're like, the food's not even that great. But why did you go? Or why is this restaurant even relevant? It's because of the name, right? And Aaron Rodgers, I believe, is that kind of guy. You hear his name, you're like, oh my God, it's Aaron Rodgers. But honestly, he's not playing any better or doing any better than what Zach Wilson was doing last year for the Jets, and that's just a fact. So, very underwhelming performance for this Jets team. It doesn't get any easier for them because the Bills are continuing to win, and they made a smart pickup by getting Amari Cooper. That's going to help make their offense even better with Josh Allen throwing him the football. So, but again, it comes back to the organizational structure, and the Jets literally sold their soul to Aaron Rodgers to possibly make a run at a Super Bowl, but hell, they'll be lucky to even make the playoffs at this point. All right, moving on. Let's talk about what we learned between the Packers and the Texans. Now, this was a very highly acclaimed game going into this game. Obviously, Packers and Texans, both teams are vying to be one of the best teams in their respective conferences, even in the National Football League as well. So I knew this game was going to be competitive, and it came down to the very last play, honestly, the Packers getting the win over the Texans. Now, let's take a look at the Packers side of things and what we learned. I think they're continuing to struggle on offense. 2 first half interceptions by Jordan Love kind of kept the Texans in the game. If you really think about it, Jordan Love outplayed CJ Stroud tremendously. I believe CJ Stroud only threw for like 80-something yards. Jordan Love did pick it up in the second half and led his team down to get that go-ahead field goal to win the game ultimately. But one thing I will say about the Packers is, though, and you kind of saw it a couple weeks ago with the Minnesota game. I know they lost that game. And you've seen it throughout the rest of the other games that they played. They show tremendous resiliency. Despite their offensive inefficiencies and sometimes even on the defensive side of things, they hang around. And that's the mark of a good team, right? Is that they just don't fold like the Cowboys, right? The Cowboys are down 3 points. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're like, well, that's game, right? But when you look at other teams, you're like, oh, that's nothing. When you look at the Chiefs, you're like, oh, 14 points in the Super Bowl, we're down that. It might as well be a point. It might as well be tied, right? And you look at the Packers, they are very resilient in that regard, especially against another playoff caliber type team. So that's one thing I really love seeing about them. And then Jordan Love, although he did have those early mistakes in the game, he was able to turn it around. And what I also love about him is that he distributes the ball evenly to a bunch of receivers. Whoever's open, whoever has the hot hand, he knows how to get the ball to him. And let's be real, I don't think a lot of people thought Jordan Love was going to be as good as he is today, right? They just thought, oh, a kid out of Utah State, he sat behind Aaron Rodgers for so long. He's one of the very few guys, in my opinion, that sits behind and waits for his turn to come out and just be a complete stud. Jordan Love is the real deal. There's no doubt about that. And you can dispute me in the comment section if you want to, but the facts do not lie. The guy is a stud, and he's legit. He's legit. And the Packers are legitimate Super Bowl contenders in a very contested NFC North division, right? There's a possibility, and we'll talk about this later. There's a possibility that all 3 teams or 4 teams in this division could make the playoffs, at a minimum 3, right? And they're right there, right? And, they got to compete against the Lions, though. They got to play against Minnesota again, right? They still got to go up against the Bears, et cetera, right? So, but one thing for me that really stood out for me is that they have the heart of a champion. although they haven't won any championships yet recently, but they've shown and proven to me that they can make a couple mistakes, but they can bounce back and be efficient to get these wins, which you're going to need, especially in the playoffs, right? It's not going to be clean all the way. That's one thing I like about the Packers. Now, on the other side of things, the Houston Texans, they're having a hard time protecting CJ Stroud. I believe he's been sacked 22 times already this year, and I could be wrong, right? Just fact check me on that. At least 4 times this past weekend against the Packers, and I think that's causing him to not be effective, or at least not in this particular game. And of course, you don't have Nico Collins, one of the best wide receivers thus far this season. That does put a crimp in your game plan there. Now, other guys need to step up, like Tank Dell. Like, where were you? Stephon Diggs, he's still a prominent receiver. But Joe Mixon did his thing. I will say that when Joe Mixon is in the lineup for this team, look out, because I believe he is a catalyst for them, and without him, they would be dead in the water. Personally, I really believe so. So if you look out for the Texans, you just got to make sure that you keep CJ Stroud upright, and defensively, still giving up big plays in the secondary. You can't do that. You got to find ways to shore up these things. And I will say this, they are a resilient type of team too, as well. So they're almost built similar to the Packers as well. Really young quarterbacks, teams that are very resilient as well. They do make mistakes. So, but I think they learn from those mistakes. I think they'll bounce back. No loss is good. But I think a loss like this, close, a game that you probably should have won in the end, really. They couldn't convert late in that game to kind of keep the drive going, to limit and minimize the time the Packers had. They couldn't do what they needed to do, and therefore they lost the game. But I think they've proven to me that they can do that in other types of games too. So I'm not, this is their second loss of the season. They're 0-2 against the NFC North. I still think they're the best team in their division as well. One of the better teams in the AFC outside of the Baltimore Ravens. I really feel like they can really do some damage. So not too concerned with them. But one thing I did learn about them really is that they need to protect CJ Stroud and make sure he's upright. And then they definitely got to get Nico Collins back in the lineup as well. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the 49ers and Chiefs, a rematch of Super Bowl 58. Where the Chiefs prevailed in that game, and they also prevailed again this past Sunday against the 49ers, a depleted 49ers team, but I'll get to that in just a second. But one thing we did learn about this team is that Steve Spagnuolo's defense is legit. They are literally the glue holding the Kansas City Chiefs together, right? And we'll talk about Patrick Mahomes in just a second, but the fact that they are limiting quarterbacks. I read a stat today where they have not, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have not given up 300 yards to a quarterback in, like, I think the last 12 games or something crazy like that. And if that's true, like, that's crazy. Like, that's how good this defense is. And they've lost guys. They've lost guys on the defensive side of things. The free agency, injuries, whatever the case may be. But it seems like whoever they plug in back there, it's working out for them. And this whatever scheme that Steve Spagnuolo is running or continues to run, it's fantastic. And they are continuing to hold opponents under 28 points for at least the 25th or 26th consecutive time, if I'm not mistaken. So this team just finds ways to win. And I know people hate on them. They feel like the referees cheat for them. They are probably the new reincarnation of the New England Patriots, right? But one thing I say about this team is that no matter what happens, they're never out of a game. And I picked them to win this game last week because there's no way in hell I'm picking it. And I said it in my clutch picks of the week. There's no way I'm going against Mahomes and the Chiefs until they lose. Right. So, but and like I said before, they lost some guys on the defensive side of things, but they still found a way to neutralize what the 49ers do. And that's run the football very effectively. Right. Now, and I get it. The 49ers are injured. They have a lot of injuries, probably worst situation I've ever seen in quite some time. Now, you look on the offensive side of things with the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is not playing well at all. I believe he has more interceptions than he does touchdowns. And he had another pair this past weekend against the 49ers, despite still making the big plays in the end to win the game. Now, the Chiefs running game kept them in par. Kareem Hunt has been phenomenal since re-signing with the team, right? He looks like he's been in the fountain of youth. And he looks like old Kareem Hunt when he was back with the Chiefs the first stint. So, they know what they need to do. They don't have the talent outside right now with Rashee Rice going down. Xavier Worthy, as fast as the kid is, I don't think he's a true number one. He's just a gimmicky kind of guy. You get him in an end around, a jet sweep, maybe a quick slant, something, but not a guy that you can rely on every week. All really Mahomes has right now is Travis Kelce and the running game and the defense, and they're banking on that, which is not a bad formula. Like, I think when you look at Patrick Mahomes, and there was a guy on social media who said that he would have taken Brock Purdy over Patrick Mahomes. And like I get what he was trying to say, but at the end of the day, you got to throw out stats. And that's stupid, right? But when you look at guys like Patrick Mahomes, stats do not matter. What matters, and this does not show up in stats, is the ability to make big plays in the big moments and crucial parts of the game. And that's what Patrick Mahomes will do. This guy will throw 2 interceptions in a game this year, but when you need that 4th and 3, 4th and 2, 4th and 4, whatever big play you need, or a 3rd and long to continue the drive, he'll get it done. And those are backbreakers for teams when you play the Kansas City Chiefs. Hell, ask San Francisco 49ers about that. They know exactly what that feels like to go up against Patrick Mahomes on several occasions where he's broken their back, where maybe he wasn't even the best player on the field, but at the end of the day, he made the big plays when it mattered most. And that's why I would never take a Brock Purdy over Patrick Mahomes any day. I don't care. Brock Purdy can throw for 10,000 yards this year. Give me Patrick Mahomes any day of the week. So I don't agree with that gentleman's take. It is what it is. It's his own opinion. Now, is it flawed? Absolutely. Absolutely, because Brock Purdy has not made those types of plays. So therefore, he should not garner the same respect as Patrick Mahomes. So basically what I'm saying is put some respect on Patrick Mahomes' name because, yeah, he's not playing great. But if he realizes and figures out how to get out of this funk, it's over. It's over. You might as well just crown them again. So I'll leave it at that. That's what we learned about them. Now, as far as the 49ers, what we knew and what we already learned too is that they can't beat the Chiefs to save their lives. At least Kyle Shanahan can't beat it. Now, their offense continues to struggle, rightfully so. No Christian McCaffrey. Debo left the game early due to illness. Brandon Ayuk is out for the year. Jordan Mason was battling injuries himself. Juwan Jennings is gonna be one of the guys now for them. Like, great guy. He had a really good game a couple weeks ago against the Rams, right? Pretty solid Super Bowl. But is he a guy that they're gonna really have to hang their hat on to win games? I don't think so. And defensively, they're not as good as they used to be, right? So I don't know what the quick fix is for them. I will say this though, Purdy's gonna have to play more consistent. And one thing Purdy has been good this whole time throughout his short career, he has been consistent. And the last couple of weeks, he's been inconsistent. So now he's going to have to clean up for sure and minimize the interceptions. Again, that's a big thing that was something that we haven't seen from him, right? And so this is the time now where a lot of the people, Brock Purdy is one of the top 5 quarterbacks. Well, prove it. Prove it. Like, you're the guy, and the 49ers are in a weird situation now because they're going to have to figure out if they're going to pay him. You just paid a lot of money to Brandon Ayuk. He's gone for the year, ACL injury, right? You have all these guys that are in and out of the lineup. Is it fair to Brock Purdy? No, it isn't. But this is the nature of the National Football League. So I don't know. And then on top of that, Kyle Shanahan continues to struggle in the fourth quarter, blowing leads or not making the right calls, or whatever the case may be. Statistically, he just needs to improve better in closing out these games. And that's something historically we've talked about on this show or my NFL Wake Up Sunday show, is that he does not close games particularly well as far as a coaching perspective is concerned. So in conclusion, what we learned is that, again, the Niners cannot compete with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still far more superior to me, in my opinion, from a coaching standpoint, from a player personnel standpoint, regardless of the injuries, regardless of the play of the quarterback. It's time to worry if you're a 49ers fan. The only thing you got good going for you is that you got the Cowboys coming in, who are a hot mess at this point. So you better get right against the Cowboys, because if you don't get right against the Cowboys, you got a problem, because the Cowboys are a very terrible team at this point. And so if you don't get right against them, then it's really downhill for them for the rest of the season. And bump me even winning the division, bump me making the playoffs. They're not going to even be a team that's relevant in the next couple of weeks if they don't get the ship righted here in the next couple of weeks or games.